Welcome to City Life. I'm Beverly Thompson. Beginning this month, City of Durham residents will be paying just a little bit more in their annual property taxes. So how will the city's nearly $390 million budget ultimately impact you and your family? Joining me to talk about the budget and what the increases in taxes, rates, and fees will ultimately mean to you is City Councilmember Steve Schewel and City Manager Tom Bonfield. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining me. Councilman Schewel, let's start with you. I'm sure our viewers want to know first and foremost more about those property tax increases. And how did the rate increase and what will it mean for the average homeowner?
Yeah, well, like all homeowners in Durham and like everybody in Durham, renters who pay this too through the where they rent, I have to take the tax increase that everybody took. So I know what it feels like. We did raise the property tax rate about 2.37 cents per $100 of valuation. And what that means for somebody that owns a $150,000 home is that they would be paying about $35 more per year. And so that's not insignificant. We hate to raise taxes. But I'm sure we'll talk here today about some of the reasons that we needed to do so.
I'm sure council members don't take that lightly.
We don't.
And give it a lot of thought.
We give it a lot of thought.
But Tom, I know this year it also seemed to be quite a lot of discussion and deliberation and resident input considered when you were working on the budget, and it did result in bumping up the taxes just a little bit. What will the extra money be used for, and why was an increase needed to accomplish it?
So of the little bit more than 2 cents tax increase, it can be broken down into a number of categories. One, there was a certain portion of the tax rate that went to pay for increased debt service. Over the last 5 or 6 years, Durham residents have very favorably supported bond referendums, where particularly around the street resurfacing program in 2010, and now comes time that we have to start paying that money back. So a portion of that is to pay that debt service. Another portion of the tax increase was to cover the public safety officers that we have had on the payroll. That's a total of 16 police officers and 15 firefighters, I believe. Previously, they've been on the payroll, but they've been covered by some federal grants. Those grants have expired. And in order for us to retain those individuals on the payroll, which public safety is always a very high priority for Durham residents, it is required that we come up with a way to pay for them. Thirdly, the council did authorize a ½ cent increase for improvements to the maintenance of our parks and recreation facilities, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. And then finally, there was a component that the council added toward the end of the process that basically transitioned the solid waste fee out of existence and covered that gap with the property tax rate.
Okay. Well, Councilmember Schewel, as a council member, I know you had to give a lot of consideration to whether or not that change from a fee to a tax was really necessary. Why did a majority of the council members believe that the change was worth it?
Well, Beverly, this was a close vote. It was a 4-3 vote, and I was on the side of the majority this time. We're really lucky with our council because we're usually pretty unanimous. I have a fantastic bunch of colleagues, and we don't debate many issues very hotly, but this was one that we did. The solid waste fee, which was $1.80 per month or $21.60 per year, the majority of us felt that the fee was regressive. So, for example, somebody with a $75,000 house would pay exactly the same amount as someone with a $500,000 house, and so I think that was the basic reason was we wanted to make it fairer, and we thought the property tax would be a fair way to do that. Some of my colleagues disagreed. I respect them very much. It was a close call, but those were the reasons that we did it.
Okay, all right. And Tom did also mention that a portion of the tax rate increase would go toward parks maintenance or repairs in the parks. I know you've been a huge advocate of park maintenance and more attention and just overall funding for parks. Tell us more about the ½ tax increase and what it will do.
Well, the ½ tax increase will produce about $1.3 million roughly to help maintain our parks. And so Some of my council colleagues and I have been out in our parks quite a bit and looking at the condition of them. We have, it's everything from broken sidewalks to fields that need resurfacing to fences that need mending and basketball goals that need fixing up. It's a wide variety of things.
These are necessities.
These are basic necessities. This is infrastructure. It's sort of like if you think about the money that we put into repaving our streets, which is a huge priority for Durham citizens. We really needed to do that, and this is also infrastructure. Would you like me to talk as well, Beverly, to folks a little bit about what we're doing in the capital improvement plan for our parks?
Sure, we're actually going to get to that, but if you
Okay.
want to talk
Yeah.
about it now, that would be fine too.
One of the great things that I think we've got in this budget, and I thank the city manager and our staff for this, is what we're doing in our capital improvement plan for our parks. We are resurfacing Twin Lakes, which badly, badly needs it. That park's used 362 days a year. We are putting an artificial turf surface at Herndon Road Park, which is badly needed and will really extend the use of that park. We're adding parking facilities at the American Tobacco Trail, which will include people. The Horse Council has contributed, so there'll be some sort of longer spaces where people who ride horses can park their trailers there. We are resurfacing tennis courts, basketball courts. We're doing a lot in this budget for our parks, which I think is fantastic.
Okay, all right. But like you said, that was CIP funding rather
Yes.
than the tax increase.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Bonfield, Councilman Schewel also mentioned the streets, condition of city streets. How does this budget support continuing to maintain our streets?
Well, certainly, as I said, the top two concerns of our residents when anytime we do surveys typically are public safety issues and the conditions of our streets. And in 2010, when we took the most recent bond referendum to the residents again, which they overwhelmingly approved, we said this is the last time we're going to borrow money to maintain our streets. We're going to begin to build in regular funding in the annual budget to cover street resurfacing. I'm pleased this year we've been able to increase that amount from $750,000 to $1 million. It's still not exactly where we need to be, but every year that we can build into the base budget an increase in street resurfacing dollars, that's going to further the ability to keep our streets properly paved and smooth, but also keep us from having to go to borrow money into the debt market to pay for what is really just a basic maintenance service.
I'm sure a lot of residents will be glad to hear that, as well as people who supported the bond referendum a few years ago.
It is keeping
That
our
was
commitment.
Something, they wanted to hear. Councilmember Schewel, during this year's E-Town Hall in June, a large number of residents lobbied City Council to increase funding for sidewalks. That was a huge topic, and it was proposed at $400,000. The City Council listened and acted. What did Council do to meet this need, and how will it be paid for?
We added another $125,000 for sidewalk repair, which is fantastic. But just to put that in perspective, we're only talking about repairing about another 1 mile of sidewalk. This is really expensive, but it was really great to hear from our residents how important that priority was for them, and it was great we were able to meet it. We're meeting out of one-time funds. This is not part of a tax increase. The administration is going to come back to us with a kind of longer-term plan for our sidewalks because we've been hearing a lot about them lately. But we were able to do this without putting it into a further tax increase.
And also during E-Town Hall, they talked about planning, the planning department. What was ultimately decided about what needs the planning department have?
Well, first let me say that I'm very pleased that the issues around the planning department this year's budget went very smooth. The Durham County was an equal partner with the city and committed to do that in terms of funding planning. There was some additional requests that were made by residents who spoke during the E-Town Hall meeting, in particular around planning for some of our historic districts and creating some new historic districts. And at the end of the day, the council appropriated an additional $20,000, which just the city will pay out of our reserve funds to allow for the Golden Belt area planning process, historic planning process to move forward. Previously, because of commitments of staff resources, that was going to be a couple more years down the road. So this is going to move that up a couple of years faster. So the community is interested in planning, wants good planning, and the council and the county commission have been very supportive, since the planning department is a joint city-county department.
Okay. Another issue is the GREAT program, police officers in schools.
Yeah.
And I understand it's not reimbursed by Durham Public Schools, and it does reimburse the sheriff's office, I'm
Yeah.
told. Why was this such a huge issue for council, and what has changed with that arrangement?
Well, I think the reason this is important, let me step back a minute. I was on the school board for 4 years, and I saw the importance of having police officers in our schools. And also, I think that there is a lot of merit to the GREAT program, the gang resistance program. There are some people that debate that, but I feel it's very valuable. It is, as far as I know, the only preventive gang work that we really do in this city. So, that being said, one of the questions is who pays for it?
Right.
And so we have been contributing to that quite a lot of money. And the county also does, but the county gets reimbursed by the school system for several $100,000. And we have asked the school system to reimburse us as well on an equal basis. What's happening with that now is that we have it in our budget, and a discussion is going to occur between our city manager and the new superintendent of schools and the county manager, and they'll come back to us with a plan to think about what should be what should these officers be doing, how many of them do we need, who should be paying for them, because it really is it's very important to our community. But this is one of those kinds of things when you have different governmental bodies that you've got to work out, and I feel confident that we'll work it out well.
That's good. That sounds good. And Tom, I know another recurring theme that we heard during budget deliberations was the impact of nonprofit organizations and their overall impact on poverty, which is one of the mayor's big projects for the year. Tell us about the decision regarding MDC, and tell us what that stands for.
Well, the Made in Durham proposal, it technically isn't just about poverty. It is about helping all young people in Durham move from an education to career pathway, but certainly a major focus of that is intended to be around those youth that are otherwise disengaged and don't have a pathway to a credential or an employable status. Obviously that leads to poverty, that leads to other challenges. But in particular, the mayor's emphasis on the poverty reduction programs were not necessarily that we figure out a way to spend more money on new things, but we be better strategically focused and streamline many of the resources that we do provide. So certainly there is an impact on the nonprofit community and some of the city programs as to how we do that. We don't really want to redirect money away from one neighborhood to benefit another. It is a challenge, but I'm very confident that with the work that has begun, that will continue over many years, that we will be able to adequately address the issues of poverty reduction.
A lot of information to take in. There's still a lot to talk about. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the water and sewer rates as well as the stormwater rate increases, in addition to changes for yard waste customers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
About half the coal-fired power plants across the nation were built more than 40 years ago and have never installed advanced pollution control technology. Right now, there are no national limits on how much mercury and other air toxics those facilities can put into the air. Pollutants from power plants can cause serious health problems like asthma attacks and heart attacks. That's why EPA has new mercury and air toxic standards to help protect our communities and our children's health and development by reducing power plant pollutants using widely available technology. Technology that can be made by American companies and installed by American workers. Our mercury and air toxic standards will save thousands of lives. It's an important advance for clean air and a healthier future for all Americans.
In the city, there are many cleaner alternatives to getting to work. Cut carbon pollution by biking, taking public transport, or carpooling. Green your commute. Act on climate change.
Welcome back to City Life. In addition to a property tax rate increase, Durham property owners will also be paying more for water and sewer and stormwater services, as well as yard waste. Joining me again to talk about why these increases were needed and what it means for you are City Council Member Steve Schewel and City Manager Tom Bonfield. Thanks again for staying with me.
Thanks for having us.
Tom, first of all, let's ask you the question about the higher water and sewer rates and the stormwater rates, and why were increases in taxes or the fees actually needed for this?
Well, the main thing that drives the increase in fees for both of those are concerns over environmental regulations and the water quality in both the Falls Lake watershed and the Jordan Lake watershed. The water conditions, the water quality in those bodies are not meeting federal standards or state standards, and so there is a need to change out our systems, whether they're the capital facilities at the water reclamation facilities, or in some cases the stormwater areas, to improve the overall water quality. So while our operational costs have been fairly stable in both water and sewer and stormwater, we need to continue to generate revenues to pay for some very, very expensive upfits. In the case of our water system, a lot of many of our water pipes are over 100 years old. They're some of the original water pipes that were in the ground when the system was first built. And so they have certainly had their due, and many of the big projects that we see going on now are replacing water pipes and those water lines and those kinds of things as well. The water rate increase was about what we thought it was going to be, maybe slightly less, as well as the stormwater rate increase. One of the things the council has committed to is, instead of having large increases every few years, we tried just to have small, the incremental smaller rate increases. I think in the water and sewer rate it was like a 2.5% rate increase. So fairly small, a dollar or two per customer per month, of course, depending on consumption. But rather than see big spikes up and down in water bills and sewer bills, we try to build in just slight increases every year, primarily to help pay for those big capital costs.
So this was part of a larger plan a few years ago.
Correct.
To take care of our infrastructure. Okay. And what about the the yard waste fee? I know that went up a dollar as well.
So yard waste service is an optional service that residents can choose to have if they want to have weekly disposal of any kind of yard waste, non-household waste of that nature. And most people don't realize that service does not pay for itself. The city, through tax dollars, subsidizes the yard waste program. Currently, that is a $5 a month charge for the service, and then there's a small rental fee for the cart. And what was approved in the budget was a $1 a month increase in that service. So now that rate's going to go from $5 a month to $6 a month. And for those residents who like the ability to put grass clippings and leaves and have it taken off their property, that's fine. But I would point out that while the $1 increase is going to shrink the subsidy, it's not going to do away with the subsidy altogether. There still will be an aspect of that service that will be supported by everyone's tax dollars.
Okay, so let's talk about other factors that affect the budget. Councilmember Schewel, I know that some decisions made by the North Carolina General Assembly have a huge impact on the city's budget. And how will their decision about the possibility of doing away with the local privilege license tax impact Durham? This is a tax on businesses, right?
Right. Well, it'll impact it in two ways, Beverly. One of them is immediate. In this year's budget, much to our surprise, the General Assembly took an action that is making it so that we had to come up this year with $129,000, and we came up with it out of our reserves, again, not through a tax increase. But this is, for next year, the amount of money that we would lose under the legislation that they have passed is $2.9 million just to Durham alone.
Wow.
That's a big hit. Now, the governor and some of the legislative leaders have said they're going to try to make the cities whole. They're going to try to make it so that there's other revenue sources that we will be able to use that will come from the state. What I would say is we've yet to understand or know what that might be. So the potential is there, that we would have to cover that here in Durham, but we're hopeful that the state will help us out to cover some of that.
Okay, all right. Well, looking at the big picture as well, it was reported in a local paper that Durham's tax rate is the second highest
Yeah.
in North Carolina among all the cities. And each year Durham's tax rate is compared to other cities. I mean, you can
Sure.
count on it. You know, people are going to compare, especially our neighboring cities, to Durham. Do you feel that the tax rate discrepancy between Durham and Wake County are a problem, or do you look at the whole picture, just given the cost to live in each community?
Yeah.
How do you see
Well,
that?
the way I think about it tends to be in what I would call cost per customer, and that's a model that our budget department has developed and helped and showed to us on City Council, where you don't just count the taxes that the city is levying on residents, but you also count the fees that the city is levying. And when you look at that, Durham's right in the middle of the pack. You can, yes, definitely we are higher on the property tax end, but we're much lower than many of our neighboring cities on the solid waste fee, for example, much lower. We're much lower than Orange County on our water rates. We're far lower than Cary and Raleigh and other cities on our solid waste fee. So when you add it all together, what is our cost per customer? You're talking about taxes and fees together. I think Durham is really where we need to be, and I think we're funding our government in a more progressive way.
Tom, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think you have to look at, every municipality kind of incorporates their costs of services in a little bit different way, charges them a little bit different way to fit the needs of their community. And as Councilmember Schewel pointed out, if you look at the totality of costs of basic services and compare those for Durham and in our cities in the Triangle, we are very competitive. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest. We're right in the middle. Durham, has some very unique service issues that we are committed to address, and this is the way that the council and the administration has proposed to do that. So I don't think we should apologize for it, but at the same time, we take this budget process very, very seriously. This process starts for us in the very beginning of the calendar year, in some cases earlier, because we are looking for ways that we can reduce costs. I mean, just in this budget alone, our departments had their budgets reduced by something over $2 million of costs and reductions that are saving money, in essence, so that we could afford to do other things. And so we're continually looking for ways to be more efficient, to get the job done. Certainly our community and our city is continuing to grow. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses and thousands of apartments being built every day. And that means more residents, more services are going to be required. Does it mean a little more tax base? Yes. But in many cases, the tax base that's generated off that new development is not covering all of the costs of services. So we have to constantly look for opportunities to be more efficient, to prioritize how we're spending our money, and maybe sometimes that means we don't do some other things. And all of that goes into our consideration before we want to get to the point of saying we're going to do everything for everybody and just keep raising taxes to get it done. That's not what happens.
Very thoughtful consideration about the whole subject. And building on that, I know Councilmember Schewel, you recently submitted a guest column to the local newspapers, and you detail how hard tax dollars actually work in Durham to provide the needs and some of the wants of residents and businesses. Why did you feel compelled to write such a column?
Well, I think that sometimes people don't really understand everything that their tax dollars are doing. Excuse me. And when I got on City Council, I didn't understand it either. It's amazing. It's big. Just to name a few things, just in this last year, our tax dollars, yours and mine, and everybody's watching, paved 12 miles of streets, put 516 police officers and 306 firefighters on the street, boarded 20,000 people every day on data buses. We collected 14,000 tons of recycling. We collected solid waste every week from 71,000 homes. We maintain over 400 stoplights. I could go on and on. The number of things, we housed 80 homeless families. I mean, the kinds of, the variety and the numbers of things that we do here in this city with our tax dollars is just amazing. And I just think it's really important that people understand what Tom was saying earlier. We take this very seriously. Raising taxes is not something that we do lightly. It is something that takes the most serious consideration. But I do feel confident that our administration looks really hard for where we can get savings, and I feel like we have an extremely efficient administration, that we do use our tax dollars wisely and carefully, and that we do a tremendous amount of work with them.
Great. I don't know what else to say, except Mr. Bonfield, if you could tell us, people want to learn more about the budget, you know, building on the fact that we could go on, but if they can look at it, where should they go?
Absolutely. Well, certainly folks could look at our website, find all of the budget details on our website. We have copies of the budget available in the public libraries. They can contact our office if they want to come in and see them. Or if they got a question, send us an email. Pick up the phone, give us a call. We have many, many people in our budget staff and the city manager's office that'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
All right. Any closing comments?
Well, I do want to give a compliment to our city manager and our budget staff and all of our department managers this year. The budget process is long, it's arduous, it's incredibly detailed, and I think that you all did a great job to make our job easy. So.
Great. I want to thank you both for joining me. I heard someone say once that a budget is like a value statement for a community. And for me, for Durham, it's like showing that what we value is listening to people and hearing what their needs are and trying our best to accommodate them in an efficient way. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
That's all right. Well, that does it for this edition of City Life. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and watch us on Durham Television Network and on YouTube. I'm Beverly Thompson. Thank you for joining me to learn more about City Life in Durham.